Welcome to Wines and Wonders. True stories with a side of wine. Looking for inspiration for your life and your wine glass? This is your podcast.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders. So happy to have you guys here today. I'm Kirsten Fox, here with Dannielle Bryan, the Psalm and the Shaman, talking to you today from a nice, beautiful summer day.
A nice, beautiful, blustery, polleny summer day here at the Fox residence.
Yes. We are literally covered
in pollen.
Fuzz and little light yellow pollen everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, it's everywhere.
Yes, it is. Snow globe style.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nook and cranny of everything that you've never needed to dust before. Yes, That's what's happening right here. But it's lovely because it shows new life. And
yes.
It's always nice. So, Dannielle, I know that you have just finished a program that you call the Medicine Wheel, and you just finished one of the series in the Medicine Wheel. And I thought, we've really never talked about what really is this Medicine Wheel. Now, I went through this maybe 5 years ago. I think I was your first class.
You were my first independent class here in Utah.
My goodness.
Yes.
And I know you've grown a lot since then and made some changes in that. So I thought what we do, though, is just start maybe a little bit with the history of the Medicine Wheel. And I had, in the back of my head, I had heard what I would have thought was a Native American approach to Medicine Wheel, or the compass and when you did those. I don't know if you ever did them. Those they were like popsicle stick things where you wove yarn around and it kind of made a dream catcher kind of thing.
Yeah. So
So that's always what I pictured as Medicine Wheel for Native American. But you study the Incan tradition. And so what is the Medicine Wheel Incan tradition compared to what we are more probably, if you've ever been exposed to the Medicine Wheel, familiar with here in the U.S.?
So the Medicine Wheel is, when we talk about it here in North America, it becomes synonymous with different North American, Native American traditions and different tribes. They all have their own culture within the culture. They have their own traditions. And the Medicine Wheel is comprised of the four directions in southwest, northeast, southwest. So northeast, southwest is one of the ways in which I believe it's the Lakota work with their Medicine Wheel, and that's the directions in which they move through. Like you might, when somebody's saying a prayer, opening it up, they may start in the north, east, south, west. I'm pretty sure that's how I've heard it. So forgive me if that is incorrect. This has not been the roots of my study. But there are, the Medicine Wheel is comprised of the four directions. And what I teach, the roots of the path that I teach and that I practice personally and that is woven into my personal private client practice, the wisdom teachings, the ways in which I engage the energetics, the ways in which we engage the philosophies, the mystery teachings, the wisdom teachings, all of those are rooted in the South American Andean traditions of Peru. And specifically, many of them are taught and passed down from the Q'ero Nation in Peru, which the Q'ero Nation lives high in the Andes in Peru. And they are a native people of this region. Now, there are many different, like we have tribes up here in North America, there are different tribal nations, if you will, in Peru. So there's the Q'ero Nation, and then there's down in the jungles of Peru, there's the medicine peoples of the jungles of Peru, which have variations in the ways in which they come to their own practices, their spiritual practices, than the Karo, the high mountain peoples. So again, there's regions here and different cultures within the culture, different beliefs and traditions within the different peoples. And so the wisdom teachings are rooted in those traditions that I practice and that I study. Now, my history, where did I begin my learning with this, was through the Four Winds Society that was founded and created by Alberto Villoldo. And he's a well-known author and teacher and thought leader in the shamanic traditions. So if you begin to open up into, the thought leader realms and spiritual teachers and healers and schools and such things in this arena, this self-help spiritual arena, Alberto is well known in those pockets, in those arenas. And so I studied with the Four Winds Society, and what Alberto has done, he spent decades, over 30 years and more now, working with the different people of Peru, going down to Peru and studying. And he started out as a medical anthropologist going down, and he had a grant where he was from the school he was teaching at, and they sent him down to Peru to begin to look at health and psychosomatic health and work with looking at these people who have worked with different plant medicines and different traditions for healing and such. So this is what embarks him on this. And so he goes down, he spends many years learning these traditions and these practices, and he brings it back to North America from South America, all these teachings. And he was also a student of Jungian psychology, and he was, he was aware of the North American traditions and the Native American traditions. And so what Alberto did and what he does is he's a great bridge and weaver, and he took these traditions and these wisdom teachings and he brought it back and he began to teach it, and he set it up in a framework. And the framework that he used, that he set it up in, was the medicine wheel framework. So the 4 directions. And the way that we work with it in this particular path is south, west, north, and east. And this is how it's been set up. So these are my roots from the tradition where I learned and the school where I learned. And we talk about it as the medicine wheel. And we talk about it as the Incan medicine wheel sometimes, and the shamanic medicine wheel. And I want to take the time here to speak into the fact that there's a weave and a blend that's happening. We're not dealing with something that is ultra strictly traditional in the sense of, oh yes, if I go to Peru and work with the medicine peoples of Peru, they're going to be talking about it in the same framework and language, where they're going to talk about the medicine wheel and how all their wisdom teaching starts in the south direction, then we move to the west, the north, and east, and that's not the case, actually. So to recognize that, this has been a weave and a blend, and Alberto's been doing this in the States since the late 80s, I think, early 90s, teaching, and it's kind of become a place where he has taught so many thousands and thousands of people, and we talk about it this way, and it's been framed this way, and the Four Winds Society is an amazing, wonderful school, and it has, within the populace and the culture, here we can talk about the medicine wheel, and there's an understanding of it, and this weaves in the Andean traditions within this construct of the wheel, and it makes a really beautiful map.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about this. First thing, I didn't know what the 4 winds, I didn't know 4 winds, what that stood for, but obviously that's referring to these directions.
Right.
I mean, and it does seem, there's so many overlaying beautiful things about this framework that he kind of came up with, with all of these different components that he blended together, because there's so many, as you look at the 4 directions, you've also got compasses that are trying to get you home or get you to a location. And so it's got there's so many amazing references to that. So So
your
then,
true north, right?
Yeah,
we talk
right.
about that, like follow your true north, your
Yes.
North Star, da 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 da. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful weave and play on the whole concept, the whole map, if
it's
you will.
really, really nice. And so when so I've been through your medicine wheel, and so will you talk a little bit about like what do you say that? I mean, I knew you. And you were having this new demo thing going on that you were going to try, and I'm always up for that. So, but maybe you've gotten to the point where you can describe what exactly is the medicine wheel for someone that doesn't even understand. They've just never heard of it before.
Right. Okay, so now I'm very much going to speak to the way in which I have taken my personal medicine. I spent years and years and years on this path and working with the spiritual practices, the ceremonial practices, the self-development practices, the introspective practices, and really integrating it into my life. And it's been my own spiritual path that I have walked now for the last, this particular path since 2005, right? So 16 years. And have woven it in on a very personal level, woven it in at a professional level in terms of my private client practice, and then into the teaching practice that I have. And so the weave, the blend. So, I talk about this on my website. It's called the Full Medicine Wheel, and it's walking this path of transformation. It really is a personal development track, and it is a path of transformation. And one of the core principles, we talk about this in the very first class, which is the South direction. And we talk about the fact that we want to become the map makers of our lives. We want to become the cartographers of our soul. We want to become the ones who actually make our way and traverse through these landscapes so that we create these maps in our lives to be able to navigate life. That there's going to be times where things are going to pop up and we're going to have to navigate that. We're going to have to traverse something in our lives. And sometimes these can be really exciting things, like traversing and navigating the creation and launching of a company, right? Sometimes it's navigating and traversing the giving birth to a child and becoming a parent and raising that child, or something really that can be much more challenging in life, navigating death and loss of a loved one, navigating endings of relationships, whatever kinds of relationships they are, whether they're personal marital relationships, long-lasting friendships, career paths, moving out of your home state and to another place where you don't know anybody, right? Endings and beginnings, all those things. So we map the medicine wheel. We map this path of transformation, weaving into it the wisdom teachings of these different philosophies and these different concepts. And the South direction, so we work through it the way I teach it. We move through the South, the West, the North, and the East. And the South is the starting place. And in the South, we look at and we take a dive into recognizing where our histories and our past have become the story of our life. And we work with these different archetypes. Now, these animal archetypes that we work with in this path that are associated with these different directions are the archetypes that are traditional down in Peru. And we work with serpent, or we call her Sachamama, which is the Quechuan word for serpent. And we look at this serpent medicine and we say, what is the wisdom of Sachamama, of the serpent? And she's the one who can shed her skin. And we talk about it in the relationship to our lives and to our histories and to our stories. And sometimes what can happen very unconsciously is that our history becomes our story, so much so that we start talking about it and expect our life to go a certain way. This is how it is. This is what always happens. This is what I expect to happen in my life because of these events that have taken place.
Sure, your parents teach you so many stories that you end up believing and thinking that's what your future is, right? I mean, not just to even,
Yeah, this is who I am. This is who we
what
are.
we do. This is what our family does. Yes.
And so we look at that and we say, okay, let's recognize and honor the history and the wisdom that lives in these stories, but let's also recognize that we are not our story and that we can shed that story just as the serpent sheds her skin, so we can come into new ways of being. We can come into a new story, if you will. We can come into new skin, if you will. We can come into a new engagement with life, if you will. And we do this through, each direction is 4 days long, the way I teach it. And so we're in it from Thursday to Sunday, all day, right? All day,
just
9 hours a day.
Exploring all
digging,
of this
mining,
stuff.
looking, jumping in. And
it's exhausting. I mean, I remember being exhausted. But it's very valuable, and it opened my eyes to so many stories that had just been, I mean, either I thought they were everyone's stories, and so they weren't even a story to me. It was just like, this is what we do, as humans. So there was that realization, and then there were realizations that I had accepted labels and all these different things from people and who I was supposed to be and all this, and when in fact that wasn't who I really was. But, as kids, we're just trying to not be dropped off at the nearest curb, by your parent. So you're trying to fit in pretty well and want them to want you. Yep. So I was pretty good at that because I didn't get dropped off, but I also took in a lot of those stories as reality, as mandatory.
Yeah. And so that you bring up a great point, Kirsten, because there's the personal stories, and then we have cultural stories, and then we have societal stories, and then we have gender stories, right? And then we have this weave of these stories, and we talk about it as the collective story. There's an archetypal story. So when I talked about earlier, just a few minutes ago, that, the way in which I step in to teach this medicine, it's the weave of these different wisdom teachings from these different places. So Carl Jung, who is wonderful at helping us to understand and see what he called and what we talk about as our shadow, those places that are not obvious to us, those places that have not been illumined. And Joseph Campbell in the archetypal stories and the hero's journey and looking at those places. So we take these teachings from these wonderful teachers and we start to weave it into this particular path, into this personal development track. And so the South, we look at those places and we learn how to shed those stories. We learn how to look at the big themes in our life that continue to repeat themselves and say, okay, I can recognize that these are repeating patterns. These continue to repeat themselves, these stories, and they no longer serve me. It's no longer who I am. It's no longer relative in my life, so I don't want to keep living this particular story. And we move through these different energetic processes to allow ourselves to shift and release that from a frequency standpoint. So this is where it gets all shaman-y again, because we're not just engaging it from a mental, emotional, psychological understanding. We can talk about it that way, and of course we do in the teaching pieces of the class, but then what makes this a shamanic path? What makes this an energetic path? Energy medicine, we talk about it as shamanic energy medicine. So what makes it that? And it's the fact that we recognize that we are energetic beings, and to shift what has been going on, we want to shift our frequency, our vibrational patterning, because when we do that, it allows us to attract something different into our lives. So we're changing the tune, we're changing the frequency. We're saying, once upon a time I vibrated to this frequency and this is what I got. And now I understand that as an energetic being, I can actually allow for my vibration to shift through the release of these old programs, these old stories, which hold their own vibration, and I can step into a different frequency state. And we do this through the use of traditional ceremonies, through understanding ourselves as energetic beings, for understanding the different maps that are our energetic anatomy. And in past episodes, you and I have talked about these things. We've talked about the chakras, the meridians. We've talked about ourselves as multidimensional energetic beings. We've talked about those subtle energy bodies. So in the medicine wheel, we continue to engage these different energetic processes and being able to shift it at its core. So the South is recognizing what those repeating patterns and stories are and allowing ourselves to shift and release and let go and come into a new way of being, just as a serpent sheds her skin. And it's through that shedding of the whole skin that she continues to grow. It's the only way the serpent grows, is to shed her old skin, and she grows into her new skin. And then guess what? She sheds it again. And again, and again, and
this
again.
was, I remember this being such an important direction. And I know it's one of the harder directions, but I had not, I mean, my family, and we've talked about this in other episodes, where I had been taught that the women don't work in our family. And now this was obviously, I was a working woman, but there were these threads of the story of that whole thing, that if you're not working, that means the man needs to be working in the relationship if you're in a, heterosexual relationship. And so therefore, if I don't have to work, is the man then in charge, and all of these, and what happens when a woman does work, and is that an affront to a man? And then if in fact you have the story that really you're just kind of doing this as a hobby because you don't have to work because that's what your family's taught you, then you better pick men that are interested in working really hard for the same goals and things that you want. And maybe you don't do a very good job of picking men that want the same things that you do. And there you are. Right. You are a victim in your own life of, wait, I thought the man was going to take care of me. Here I am now working as a hobby, and where is the trip that I wanted to take to see the Egyptian pyramids? It's not coming out of his pocket because he's not necessarily supporting me or the family in that way. Right. So to get rid of that story that had been multi-generational, had been taught to me that I did not know was operating in the background of 2 marriages I've been in. Right. And to get rid of that story and be able to stand in my own power without that story just subverting things, without my subconsciously just running my show, but from behind the scenes. Yeah, that was such an interesting and very important, and I take it almost daily into my life still. Yeah, and it's been 5 years, almost daily. Yep. And so that kind of a realization and a shedding of that story was invaluable for my life, to move into new directions and stand on my own and be something other than the collection of stories that had been told to me before. Right. So, wow, that was the South. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so then tell us about, well, should we take a break? Let's do one more. The West. Yeah, let's do West. All right. Yeah.
So then the second direction is the West. And so the way I set this up is we meet quarterly. So the way I teach this is it's a year-long transformation program, and we meet quarterly. So we start, just in my world, in my calendar, we typically start sometime in February with the South, and then we come back together again sometime end of May, beginning of June. As you pointed out, I just finished teaching yesterday. And we navigate and map the West direction. Now, the West direction, the archetype associated with the West is the Jaguar. We call her Otarango, Mother, Sister, Jaguar. And the medicine of the West, the teachings of the West, are the place of looking at our family storylines and the genetic storylines and the lineage lines and the places where, to what you're speaking to, Kirsten, and I know that, the South and the West are a beautiful blend, because in the South, we're looking at those stories of our life, and in the West, we're also looking at the stories of our life that are very much been passed down through the family line. And where those belief systems come into play. And it's that place where, like you just spoke to, this was a belief system operating in the background that was the undercurrent in your 2 marriages. Right? And you don't wake up in the morning and, open your eyes and take a nice morning stretch and say, today's the day I'm going to go live out this belief system. Right. That the man should take care of me and somewhere know that he should be also supporting my desires. Right. And so these are very deep unconscious belief systems that can get passed down through the family systems. And sometimes they're those ones where the family story says, this is who we are as a family, right? This is who we are as the Herberts. Herberts are these kind of people, right? And sometimes those things get passed down. And there are people in the family systems that align with that naturally, and it works for them. And they're like, right on, I'm so glad I'm a Herbert. And then there are people where it's like, God, that is not who I am. How did I get dropped off at this house? I do want to make my way to the curb.
Yes,
can you drop me off at the curb,
me
please?
at
right?
the curb.
And so we look at those familial conditionings and how they create our belief system and where we buy into it and we believe it to be true for ourselves. And we look at those places of what we call, again, the shadow, those hidden places, those hidden motivating factors. Why do we do the things we do? What are we really looking for? What are we really seeking? What are those motivational drivers that actually are making our decisions for us, that are very subconscious, very unconscious? And we begin to recognize that we, again, it echoes the South. We are not that story. And when we can turn and have the courage to face those places that we've been avoiding for so long, those places that we don't want to see, those things we don't even want to admit about ourselves, then within that act of courage, we reclaim our power back from those places where we have subverted our power, because unconsciously what we've done is handed our power over to that belief system. And we lose our power. We lose our ability to recognize that we have choice. And when we have the courage to turn to those places and say, wow, that's what I have been doing. I have been a part of this creation in my life. I have been a part of looking at the world from this place of whatever it might be. The world owes me something because I am looking for validation for my existence, right? And so we can look at that place. We can look at those places where do we manipulate situations to get what we want so that we can actually feel loved and feel like we have purpose. And it's not that we are heartless and we're out there manipulating for personal gain. What's really going on is we might be manipulating a situation so that we can receive that very thing we're looking for, which is for somebody to say, oh, I see you and you're beautiful just how you are. And the way we're looking for that is through all this, what we would call shadow behavior, or, those unconscious motivational drivers. And so the West is this place where we dive deep into these beliefs, into these motivational factors. And again, we engage the ceremony, we engage the energetic processes to bring a shift to that. And we learn how to do different kinds of meditations and shamanic journeys where we begin to see the way things are playing out for ourselves in these different ways through guided journeys, through guided meditations. And so this is woven throughout all four directions, of course, and there's different places that are relative. And the medicine of Jaguar is the one who brings order to the chaos, or the one who has to stir up stagnation. The one who can come in and begin to help us to see those things that are hard to see beyond the stagnation or beyond the chaos. The one who can help us, we talk about the medicine of Jaguar helps us to leap fearlessly into our becoming, because it takes courage to turn towards those places that we've been acting out and have the courage to be accountable, to admit it. And then within that place, this is where the beauty lies, within that place, we can make a different choice. Because how do we make a different choice if we don't even know what's going on?
Yes.
Right? So we dive deeply into that place. And that's the South and the West. They're those big shedding directions. And then we come to the North and the East, but we can take a break and then we'll talk about those two directions.
Perfect. Okay. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Do you have a friend who's going through a challenging time in her life? And are you looking for a way to show your support that's more than just a phone call? Uplift Gift is a company that provides beautifully wrapped gift items inside a gift box, along with your handwritten message of love. in a card sent directly to your friend. It's quick and it's easy, and something will be there very soon to support her at her time of need. Uplift gift when words aren't enough.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders, inspiration for your life and your wine glass.
All right, welcome back. So here we are, Kirsten, talking about the medicine wheel.
So now we've gone through South and West, and they are kind of tied together. And I remember them being, it was a pretty emotional. You were digging a lot, digging, and finding things out that, like we just talked about, that were so buried that I had no idea they were even operating in my operating system.
Yeah.
And then we went into the north.
The third direction.
Yeah, and I have to say, I fell in love with the north. I probably because it was so uplifting compared to the other two directions, and I loved the little hummingbird is the animal for that direction, and I've got. Yes, I do. I have 3D hummingbirds in my bathroom hanging on the walls.
You do.
I do. I have three hummingbirds hanging, and they're these 3D, and it's such fun art, but it makes me, they are such fierce little creatures, and I just love them, and I now have hummingbird feeders all around trying to get more hummingbirds to come over to see me, but maybe you could talk about, I'd love to hear more. Obviously, I want to hear the general directional information, but please spend some time on the hummingbirds.
On the hummingbirds, all right, you got it. Request from the audience. Right, this next number is brought to you by Hummingbird, whom we call Serikente in the Quechuan language, Serikente. So the north is this direction where in the south and the west it's that deep shedding process where it's very personal. And we talk about the south and the west as those personal directions where we're transforming and we're looking at those places of wounding in our history and our stories and those events that have happened, those places where we've given away our power. And when we can look at it, when we can get honest, we can have the courage to look at it, we reclaim our power back. And from that, we're making medicine, right? We talk about this as the medicine wheel. And we talk about our journey through the medicine wheel as making medicine, receiving our own gifts and our own wisdom. And they become these places of our wounds, our stories, our histories become places of compassion and wisdom and power. And this is the alchemy that happens as we navigate this path. This is the transformation that is happening. It's not just about let's go dissect what's not working and look at it and wallow in it. It's about saying, let's look at it and see what is going on and bring transformation and healing to it so I can reclaim my power and stand as a self-referencing person who recognizes the wisdom that has been cultivated and grown through my very life experience, which we want to bring honor and reverence to no matter how hard that seemed and looked. And to reclaim and make that medicine, make that wisdom, create that place where we have a map that says, hey, next time things get really hard, remember, we can navigate it like this. And there are many resources you come out of each direction with, many different practices that you can take home and use in your life. This is a very practical path. The medicine men and women of South America and Peru, they talk about how your spiritual practice, you have to be able to grow corn with it. They talk about it in that way, that you have to be able to plant it in the ground and see something grow, to allow it to bring you sustenance, to allow it to feed you, to have it be practical. Use it in your everyday life. Don't just relegate your practice to when life is hard. Don't just relegate your practice to the 4 times a year that you pull it out and do something, but to recognize that we can take all this wisdom, all these practices, weave it into our life, and it becomes the very way in which we navigate through life. All right, so south and west, those big shedding directions, but so much resource and wisdom comes out of it. Then we move to the north with Serikente, Royal Hummingbird, and we come to this place where we talk about it as stepping into the center of the wheel and coming to this place of deep, deep stillness and using hummingbird as the archetypal animal. And we look at the wisdom of the hummingbird. What does she do? She is still in motion. right? She is flapping her wings a bazillion times a minute, right? And she's completely still. Now, the hummingbird also is the bird who can fly up, down, forwards, backwards, pivot side to side. They're like little helicopters, right? And we know this from the geometry of their wings, and that they are fierce, these little creatures. They're teeny tiny and they're fierce. However, in Peru, you guys, they're quite big. They call them royal hummingbirds. You'd be surprised. And so the hummingbird medicine is that place of how do we come to deep stillness within our own being, within motion. Like, we're still going to live our lives. We're still going to be busy, whatever that means. We're still going to go out and have things going on. But can we do our action, our motion from a deep place of stillness within? Can we source that sweet, sweet nectar? Hummingbirds eat nectar. They eat the sweetness from the flowers, right? Can we source that sweet nectar of life from the fullest of flowers? Can we recognize that we want to create a life where all we have to do is dip our beak into the flower that is full of sweet nectar, not into the flowers that are all dried up and dying, and we're working really hard to find the nectar at the very bottom of that flower, right? How many of us toil in life to look for the gift or look for the sweetness? It's like, let's recognize that that flower is no longer producing and move on to the next one. They also are fierce and epic little creatures that migrate across oceans. Now, hummingbirds need to eat 50% of their body weight every day. And so if they're going to take an oceanic migratory flight, there are no gardens hanging out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Right? I mean, Hawaii, maybe they have a stopover in Hawaii.
Yeah, I would stop in Hawaii if I was them. Yeah, maybe stay.
A lot of sweet flowers. Right? But the point is that we talk about it as the epic soul's journey. So this north direction, we look at it as the medicine of the soul, the soul's journey. What kind of journey am I on? What is my own epic journey that I am navigating as a spirit being in human form, as a human on the planet? So what is that soul's journey? And it is a courageous journey when we step into our lives and we begin to see our lives that way, from the evolutionary soul's journey, from that perspective that everything is divinely orchestrated, the perspective that says all things that happen in my life are designed for my personal growth and wisdom. Again, easy concept sometimes, very, very hard concept in other times, right? It is hard to look at something that is so heart-wrenching and look at it as being divinely orchestrated for our own evolutionary soul's growth. Very hard to flip that lens sometimes, very challenging. And when we do, the beauty that comes out of it is the same wisdom of reclaiming our power, not being the victim to what is happening in our life, and to be able to mine the wisdom out of each event. And in so doing, Kirsten, what would the byproduct of that kind of shift in perspective is that we remember that we have choice. We can choose to look at something this way, or we can choose to look at something that way. And it's in that very choice of how we choose to see something that it can begin to change the energetic effect that it's having on us, and allows us to come into a different navigation with it. And so this medicine of the North is looking and coming back to the essence of who we are and saying, I choose to engage my life from this place of the vantage point of divine orchestration and soul's journey, recognizing that even through the challenges, I'm growing something worthwhile, and that we can look at who we have always been. One of the big principles and big medicine pieces of this direction is starting to shift out of linear time into timelessness, realizing that anything is possible, and realizing that we can come back to the essence of who we are. And can we even let go of our roles that we've identified with? Because those are roles. Those are things that we show up and do in life, but it's not who we are in life, because who we are is independent of that role. Whether you are a wife or not, or a mother or not, Kirsten still exists. So that's not who you are, but it is part of what you have chosen to live in this lifetime, right?
I remember one of the activities that we did was to look at something that you may not be super proud of. Like for me, I remember I was working on me as a people pleaser. I was always like really embarrassed about being a people pleaser. I never was motivated to go on, marches for one. I'm very happy to look at both sides of an issue. I never really get, and I love both sides of issues. Like I can see it all, right? In terms of me, I don't really get passionate about one side or another. And I think part of that is due to me wanting to be friends with everyone. But carrying that bit of shame around about being a people pleaser, in this direction, I remember doing an exercise where not only did we, talk about the words of shame and that kind of thing that I had about this people pleasing part of my personality, but then to focus and to take the lens and reframe it as to what has that gotten me in my life? What has being a people pleaser actually done for me? And it began to take away, because we've all got friends that are very different than us, right?
Yeah.
We hope you've got friends that are different than you, but like who are like their arms are up and they're talking about something they're very passionate about, and they're going to go march on something, or they're going to go, take up the lead on some new thing they're working on that has just got to happen. And I just never had that. And I was always kind of like, where's my passion? And to reframe it as what has that people-pleasing personality done for me, and how many doors has it opened, and how many jobs have I gotten because I was very pleasant to be around as a person, and who gave me the job interview because they'd gotten a recommendation from someone else, or, so it was very interesting to flip the lens on that as you're talking about this whole learning to see things from a completely different perspective. That I remember that one. I think that was in the north.
Yeah, it was in the north where the energetic process was to unwind those roles and to look at it. And we do this in every direction, depending on what our exercise is, but we're always saying, okay, so how has this benefited you? What has been the benefit? How has this served you? And sometimes it's really hard to wrap your head around how certain parts of our behaviors serve us.
And you're like, gosh, I never get angry. That's I really should be getting angry.
Right.
Yeah.
So how has it served you? And then when we really look at that and we say, wow, this has really been here to serve me, to help me, to offer some sense of safety or protection or whatever it is, and I can see the wisdom that has come from it, then that is beautiful. Let me keep the wisdom and release the pattern. I no longer need to do this pattern because I can see how it has served me. Now I can let it go. And that North medicine is looking at those places, those parts of our personality, those identifications, those roles, those labels, all those different things. And coming to that place of being able to, the language we use is, can we strip it down? Can we release it so that we can come back to the essence of who we are? And in so doing, it doesn't mean we don't continue to show up in that role. Right? Just because we release the role of motherhood and the identification of it doesn't mean we're going to stop being a mom, right? Or stop being a, leader of a company, or stop being whatever, a passionate person of service or what have you. So we still show up and do that role. What we're doing is we're unhooking those places where we've become so identified with it that it feels like if we're not doing that thing, we will cease to exist. Or if we're not doing that thing, we have no purpose in life. Or, if we're not doing that thing, then who am I? And we don't want to get completely lost in the things that we're doing so that we lose touch with, who am I as a soul being? What is the essence of who I am? Who is the essence of who I am? And so it's that deep discovery in the north. It's a powerful direction, very sweet, and can also be just as challenging as the other ones. I mean, over the years, I've had people who frankly, the north direction has been one of the harder ones for them, not so much the south and the west. And the south and the west, they kind of cruise through it because perhaps they've worked through some of those pieces around their stories and their family history. But what they hadn't done was really work through those places where they have been completely identified with who they thought they were based on their personality and their persona and their roles in life, right? So that one can be challenging in that way as well. But
all right, well, on to the sunrise.
Yes.
The east.
The east.
Yes.
So in the east, we work with the archetype of eagle condor. Apuchin is the Quechuan word for condor, eagle condor. So in South America, they work a lot with the condor medicine. Now, we don't have condors the way they do in South America up here in North America. We have the California condor, of course, and we work a lot with the eagle archetype. So we talk about it a lot as eagle condor. You'll hear that being spoken together. In the east, the Apuchin, eagle condor medicine. And it is that place, the east is this place of, yes, the rising sun, the rebirth, the transformation, that place of transcendence. How do we transcend all of what we've just been navigating and working on for the last 8 months, 9 months? And that place where we can begin to see it from a different perspective. So that eagle's perspective, where we rise high above everything and we see a wholly different landscape than if we're down in it just looking straight ahead, right? We rise high above it. And we begin to see the weave. We begin to see the alchemy, the transformation, the transcendence that has taken place. So this is a personal perspective. As we've made this journey, this personal transformation journey around the medicine wheel, we've mapped these directions. We've come into this new way of being, this new understanding of ourselves. We have this different level of introspection. We have unhooked from these places of the stories and the family and the limiting beliefs and those shadow aspects in our roles. And we've come back to the essence of who we are. And here we are and who are we as we come to this place? What is that rebirthing? And we talk about this, the archetypal medicine, the eagle condor medicine, as the place of the visionary and the courage to be the dreamers and the visionaries of our lives. Now that we have moved so much density and mass, we have shifted so much history, we are poised to create and dream in that which has not yet been brought into form. So it's the direction of the dreamers, the visionaries, the ones who can realize that we have our own mighty wings, that we too soar wingtip to wingtip with spirit, riding those thermals, right? When we think about these big birds, they're not flapping their way to somewhere, right? They take off and their wingspan is mighty and they ride those thermals, they soar. And it looks effortless, right? And we learn how to come into this place of living our life from this effortless place of riding these thermals, of being able to soar in our life and being able to see things from a different perspective, to use those talents. This is the animal archetype medicine, to use those talents to pick apart those things that need to be seen in new ways so that we can have this different perspective, so that which we do dream is being dreamed from the essential of who we are, right? So we reach back into that north medicine. We say, yes, the essential of who I am. Let me dream that into being. Let me create more of that. And we begin to look at the medicine wheel, or this map that we have created for ourselves, as a tool and a resource itself. Remember, I said that each direction we take home these practices and these ceremonies and these exercises and these ways to integrate this into our lives, that we can dance with our spiritual practice. We can dance with this path. We can bring it in for all the magic and the beauty that it is. And in the East, we look at the whole of it and we say, wow, now there is a map in which I have created for myself. It's very personal. The way you navigate your life is very personal to you, and you have all this richness, this resource, these wisdoms that you have seen for yourself, the rich tapestry of your beingness, and that is what you take into anything that you're doing. And should we come across a challenge in our life, we can go, I remember I know how to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I know how to do this. I know what's on the other side. I can trust my wisdom and my intuition to help guide me through this place. And that doesn't mean it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we come up to the edge of everything we know, we want to believe that one of two things are going to happen. We are going to have ground upon which to stand, or we will have the wings to fly. Right? And to trust that we can navigate that place. Because in one lifetime, we continually come up to the edge of everything we've known.
Oh.
We continually come up to the edge of a growth edge for ourselves.
Thank goodness.
Right,
It would be
right?
so
boring
if we stopped at age 12 and we're just like all biding time before we die.
Right. So we come to this place where we can look at the resource that is available that we have cultivated for ourselves. And this is the beautiful thing. I get just so crazily passionate about it, is that we become self-referencing for our own soul's journey. The most beautiful thing that comes out of this process, and I hear it again and again and again, is that people come out of it and they recognize that they have a place in which they can relax into their own wisdom. They are no longer seeking outside and saying, will you please tell me my answer? And that is the greatest reclaiming of power, and that place of knowing that we have autonomy and choice in our lives.
And that whole year that I worked with you, I mean, coming out the back end of that, I had so many realizations of these programs that were running, without me knowing. I had taken trips emotionally that I mean, like, wow, there were days that I couldn't stop crying. It was just all coming up. But then also I did get a vision of what what I thought at the time my soul was looking for. And so I felt like I was less just checking off the boxes of what had, like what was supposed to happen in a person's life at this age, at this, being a mom, whatever, what else is supposed to happen, and say, what is going to happen? What are the boxes actually going to be for my life? Like my own personal choice of what I wanted to put on the list.
Yeah.
What was important for me, not had been handed down, or all those different things. And then that visioning forward, that ability, and the picture of soaring instead of working, on it all, and just allowing me in whatever I am good at soaring at to just do that instead of fitting into whatever other things. So it was an insane year of growth for me. And then I want to end with one more question, because I think it's really important, because if I was listening to this, I would want to know, because you've grown so much in your business and such. I am participating in what you call medicine wheel integration. And will you tell us just a quick thing about that? Because I am a type of person that needs to continually review what I've learned. And I think most people probably are, unless you're very familiar with something. So what is that I'm now participating in, which is keeping it at the forefront for me?
So as we come through this journey, I mean, obviously throughout the whole year, you're supported. I send you emails, and my team sends emails out, and we stay connected, and little reminders. Hey, remember, if you're going through this, you can try that, etc., etc. You come out of it with a whole binder of resource and different processes and ceremonies and things you can do. And, what I've heard over the years is that, people come through this and it can be overwhelming from the standpoint of, if you're new into this world, it's like learning a whole new language and art form, right?
Yes.
And so in your first year, it's that place of like so much information coming in and coming in and coming in. And so now what? When you leave, right? Now what? Now what am I going to do? How the heck am I going to apply Medicine Wheel to my life? And so I created the Medicine Wheel integration, which we meet once a month. And it's something that you can continue on with as kind of like continuing ed, if you want to think about it that way. And we review the directions, we review the practices, we review the processes. I take you through meditations, through journeys. Remember, these are your tools. These are the things that we did in class. This is how you can use them. This is why you want to use them. And it's really important for me to say here that, the way I come to this work, and I mentioned it just a few minutes ago, is that we don't want this practice we don't want our processes, our life, our navigation, the understanding of this path to live only in a box of, I use this when things are hard.
Yeah.
We want to stretch it out and say, yeah, I can use this when things are hard, but wow, there's so many things that I've learned that I can use to create things, to be in the magic of my life, to be in the celebration of my life. I had the great joy of officiating a wedding for this beautiful couple, and we brought in so many of these different practices, and it was stunning. It was such a celebration. So we can use this path and this medicine to incorporate it into, what do we want to create? What are we looking to celebrate in our lives? How do we want to use this to create more of the yummy stuff, the stuff that we desire? We don't want our spiritual paths to be relegated to, let me just look at the crap that's not working.
Right.
That is not fun to do that for a whole long time. Right? 4 days is good.
It was plenty.
So it's really, the integration is that place where we talk about, how are you going to grow corn with this, if you will, if we're going to use that analogy? How do I bring this into my everyday life? How do I use this in the grocery store? How do I use this when I'm parenting my 2-year-old? How do I use this when I'm parenting my 17-year-old? How do I use this when I'm in a wholly different relationship with my 30-year-old child? How am I going to use this when I'm assisting my mom in crossing over, right? We busted out these tools, you and I.
Yeah, we sure did.
We sure did. And it gets to shift the way in which we engage things like that. And so integration is exactly that. It's saying, okay, you guys, you've navigated this for the last year. It's been intense. There are things you remember, things you don't, things that stuck out where you're like, wow, I love that practice. Things you forgot that you even have that practice in your notebook. And we weave it back together and help you to make this applicable in your life. And
it's been so valuable to me now that you've added that. I mean, I know you're growing and always growing, but it's been really helpful because that makes it usable into the future instead of just that 1 year.
Right, that thing you did back 5 years ago.
Yeah, right. Like, oh, I did that. I'm already finished with that. No, it's constant. And every time when I can make it, every time. And I know you always record them and everything, but I never seem to be able to have time to listen to the recording for whatever reason. But when I'm on there live, you are always speaking to something in my life. It's always relevant. It's always relevant. And so it's really helpful that you've got that going. Well, we're going to wrap this up before I take this and pair a wine. Yes, a wine that I have in mind that's really fun. And I hope you guys will love it. Do you want to say anything about the wrap up here? And then we'll have a little break? Just that, as you spoke about, like it's always relevant. I have been working with this and sitting in it. I'm a student of the Medicine Wheel every year, right? Because we can't teach it without being in it. So it has been remarkable to, continue to integrate it and the shifts and the changes and it's expanded even beyond the personal track and expanded into a professional track where I've trained practitioners to learn how to apply these wisdom teachings and philosophies and work with clients in the same fashion that my private practice is structured. And that has also been a beautiful
journey and watching more and more people step in and say, you know what, this has been meaningful, and these are profound ways in which we can shift and heal, and more and more practitioners coming out the other side. You know, my big vision is that this kind of understanding and work to address ourselves as energetic beings becomes just as mainstream of a choice as any other mainstream modality of healing.
Gosh, wow, what a different world we'd have if everyone was aware of their own operating stories. I can't even imagine.
Yep.
Wow. Okay, well, stay tuned. We'll be right back, and we will have a really cool white blend for this next segment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned to hear what type of wine Kirsten will pair with this story right after this.
Have you ever had a friend call you in tears as she explains what she's going through, and you get off the phone and you feel like you just have to do something? Well, there is a company called Uplift Gift that is here for all of us to use when we get those kinds of calls. They have all sorts of different comforting items that they package up in beautiful wrapping and send to your friend, along with a handwritten card from you in the box, so that she feels your love from far away. Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough.
Thanks for staying tuned to Wines and Wonders. Now, what wine will Kirsten choose for your table tonight? Here she is.
Welcome back to Wines and Wonders with a Somm and a shaman, and we do hear a lot about the shaman world, so now the Somm gets to step up and say, well, what am I going to pair with this discussion? So as we look at what you're presenting, first we talked about 4 directions. So I wanted to find a wine with 4 grapes that have been used as varietals in the blend. And then also, as this is a whole process and a whole very comprehensive look at ourselves and our lives and our goals and spirits, I also wanted a wine that was very well-rounded, was very whole in itself. So and sometimes, you guys know out there, I sometimes pick an area, or I sometimes pick a type of a wine, but in this case, I'm picking a specific wine, which is a little dangerous because I'm hoping it is available in your area and you can find this, because it is a fabulous wine. It is by a woman who owns her own winery. Her name is Shelton, and she is in the Paso Robles area. And
where is that?
Paso Robles is, if you were in Santa Barbara, say, in California, kind of head east a little bit there from in that region area there. And Paso Robles is an area where, and it's really fun, it's very similar in the topography and in the sunlight and the humidity and that kind of thing to the Rhône region of France. And Rhône varietals of wine are very interesting to us. These are, you might have heard of a GSM, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. That's a blend that came out of the Rhône region. And now Australia does tons of them. And the Paso Robles area has a group of winemakers that are called the Rhône Rangers. And they make wines that are from these Rhône varietals, these very famous Rhône varietals. And there are 4 very famous white Rhône varietals. And one is Grenache Blanc, it's the base of many, many white wines out of France, especially in that Rhône region and in the Languedoc-Roussillon region further south. Also, Roussanne is another grape out of the area. Then there's Viognier, and that's a beautiful wine. And then Marsanne. So Carol Shelton produces a wine she calls Coquille Blanc. Coquille, and she named it after what the word for shell in French, coquille, white, blanc. And she uses all 4 grapes in this blend. And what I love, and people that have never had a blend like this, it's like if you're maybe a little sick of Chardonnay, what I love about this wine is it has a personality that is like it's the same size dress, but it's a completely different look. You know, let's just say, and I'm going to put this dress size somewhere in like the 14 to 16. This is a dress that's 14 to 16. This is a substantial wine. This has got some body to it, right? And the dress is, if you look at a Chardonnay, the dress may have, you know, it might be a lovely color of, say, yellow. It's and maybe a little orange in it. It's kind of this gold color, and it's a beautiful dress. But if you take that size 14 to 16 dress and you put it into a medley of colors, or maybe it's a floral pattern with lots of different colors on it, but it's still very feminine, but yet it's still a wine that's got a lot of body and fortitude in it. Maybe there's even an opera singer in, that going on there, but it's a style that is very, very similar. Different colors in terms of the fabric, but very similar to Chardonnay. It's got that viscosity. It's got some oak in it usually. And so it's a wine that you can step into from a Chardonnay and have it not really surprise your palate in a negative way, but also take your palate into new grapes, new areas that maybe you've never been before that are going to be pleasing to you. So anyway, this is a beautiful 4-grape, very well-rounded wine, size 14 to 16. and it's made of Grenache Blanc, Roussanne, Viognier, and Marsanne. Those are all grapes out of the Rhône region, but in this case, they're grown in Paso Robles by Carol Shelton. And so enjoy. Look for this Coquille Blanc, and it's spelled Coquille, Blanc, Blanc. If I was doing French, I shouldn't say the C, but we're American, for gosh sakes. Coquille Blanc, and look for it in your wine store. So that is the wine I'm pairing to the medicine wheel, the 4 grapes with the 4 directions. Anything you'd want to ask about or add?
A full-bodied experience that is not displeasing to the palate, but takes you into interesting new places.
Oh,
just like the medicine.
Perfect. All right, you guys, stay tuned for more of our brilliance.
Yes.
Another time. We're so happy you join us. And we're going to sign off here for another episode of Wines and Wonders.
Ciao.
We look forward to sharing a new story and wine with you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Wines and Wonders.